Well, all right, kiddos, it's time to sharpen up those edges and grease up your chains. We are going to live it up with mountain life. Dropping in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, mountain lifers? Mountain lovers, tell me, can you feel it? That morning chill in the air, the way it gets dark before 9 p.m., the feeling you get walking past a ski shop and seeing last year's demos at reduced prices, or this year's Pro Model Jess Kimura board from Capita. I actually just bought some carving skis, my first set since 1992, and it's all because of Bayet Steiner, who is on the show today. Bayet heli-skis as much as anyone I know, but he also still gets 20 days at least of early morning groomer speed laps. But we'll get into that after we hear from our friends at Jack Wolfskin, makers of fine, sustainable clothing, gear, and footwear. Hey, mountain lifers, do you know about Jack Wolfskin? For almost 40 years, the Jack Wolfskin name and paw print have been a symbol of their trailblazing spirit and regard for nature. Inspired by an expedition in northern Canada way back in 1981, they've led the pack with innovative, eco-conscious technologies, a commitment to social responsibility, and forward-thinking outdoor apparel and equipment designs. If you haven't seen the Jack Wolfskin paw print before, it's because they've only just completed their newest den here in North America. Jack Wolfskin will see you in the wild, wherever that is for you. Well, there you go, Jack Wolfskin. My kid loves the hoodie, and thank you for supporting the pod. This episode actually marks 2 years of Live It Up with Mountain Life. So a huge thank you to all of you for listening, and to all the awesome guests who've taken their time to sit with us over the past 24 months. And to Colin Field, who stepped up this spring to record pods from his own mountain outpost in the Georgia Bay Zone, so we can try and get these conversations to you on a more regular basis. And yes, I realize I blew that 2-week window already with this one, but hey, it was the end of summer. I was on an island. What can you do? But enough of that. Let's talk about Bayet Steiner. Bayet is a Coast Mountain ski pioneer. He's got first descents on Tśzil Nch'kay, Mount Saratus in the Tantalus Range, the Siberian Express line on Nch'kay, which is Mount Garibaldi here in Squamish. He's also skied on Waddington and Robson with renegade dirtbag ski mountaineer Peter Shrenowski, who is featured in the summer issue of Mountain Life Coast Mountains. If you can find one of those, it's also on the website, mountainlifemedia.ca. But Bayet's a pioneer in ski filmmaking as well, starting with Shrenowski in the early years. Then he shifted over to Canadian snowboard filmmaking. He was filming Craig Kelly in 1989. Then as a freelance cinematographer traveling the world to get the shots the rest of us would drool over all season long, usually starting right around this time of year. Bayet shot the classic John Zaritsky film Ski Bums with Christian Bejin. I actually had a couple shots in that film as well. And full disclosure, Bayet has some footage in Parental Advisory, the ski film I made with Travis Tetro and Chili Tom back in 1999-2000. The shots Bayet got for us were from Coola, British Columbia, which was some of the first ski filming the world had seen from that location. And Coola is where Bayet ended up. As co-owner and CEO of Coola Helisports, Bayet is in charge of one of the world's premier heli-skiing destinations, and you know he's out there sampling the goods. Bayet stopped by the studio early one morning here in the unceded territory of the Squamish Nation, and we had ourselves a little chat. A warning, though, it was so early in the morning, I actually set up the wrong microphone for my audio. My mic on this recording is 10 years old. It's passable, but Bayet sounds much better, which is ideal because he has much better stories to tell. Here we go, Bayet Steiner. Well, I mean, yeah, we're talking about mountains. So I guess where I want to start is, what's your most memorable day in the mountains in your life?
Oh, wow.
I mean, I'm sure there's been bad ones, but let's start with a good one.
A good one. There's been so many. I've been so lucky to have had all those opportunities over the years. I mean, any day skiing is a wonderful day, and it's always the last one that stands out because I guess I'm suffering from early onset or whatever, have all my life. But the the last day of skiing is always the one that, well, I mean, obviously there's the levels of good days, but I had some awesome, one of my best years of skiing was just actually last winter.
Right.
I had tons of opportunities to get really good snow. I mean, it was a good year in general in Coola, and the way the stars aligned, had a number of opportunities to, to go ski with friends rather than with guests, and like-minded friends that into exploring and adventure skiing rather than standard just skiing to rack up vertical.
Yeah.
So that was awesome.
So it's true what people think, heli skiing truly never gets old. How many years have you been up at Coola now?
This is we just finished our 20th year of commercial heli skiing, and then I did 3 years of filming up there as well. So this is going to be my 24th winter skiing in Coola coming up, and I'm as keen to do it this year as I was like when we were, actually more than when we were filming, because now I'm skiing for myself rather than working on skis, right? I get to have the pleasure of actually skiing for fun again.
The backpack doesn't have quite as much expensive gear.
Yeah, the backpack's gone, or else there's a small one. But
let's go back to that those filming days when you first saw Coola. Do you remember that trip?
I remember that so clearly, actually, because we all got, the crew that I was with, got off the plane, because we flew in that time, and we got off the plane, and I was like, oh my God, like, look at this place. This is it. How come I've never been here before? The mountains are, way bigger than in Whistler. It's like having Mount Currie on a series of Mount Curries on one side, and having a series of Squamish cliffs on the other side of the valley. And you're just, I was in heaven, instantly in heaven.
And that would have been 1999?
February 2000.
February 2000. Yeah. How did you guys end up there? Like, had somebody heard about it, or?
Well, I actually seen, ever since I moved to British Columbia in, 1981, Coola, I've always been a map guy. I like looking at maps, and, looking at the map, you see in the Central Coast, you see this community called Coola, and it's like, that's just such a magical name, right? Yeah. It's Bella and it's Coola. And but it's so far away. I had no reason to go there. I had no opportunity to go there, being busy with other stuff. But it was always there. And then in 2000, by that point, I didn't have my own production company anymore, but we were doing projects for other people like Matchstick or Standard or TGR or Warren Miller. And so we were, together with Swede, we were kind of hitting all these spots in BC where we knew there was a helicopter, and we knew that there wasn't anybody heli skiing, because I don't want to call it conflict, but it was a mix that wasn't to our advantage, where it's harder to get a helicopter because they're being used by heli skiing companies. The heli skiing companies aren't super stoked on having us shred these big lines, and then their guests are saying, how come we can't ski there, that kind of thing. Yeah. So we were kind of cognizant of that, and just to make it easier and get more freedom, we were trying to get out of Whistler more and do filming in other parts. And Coola is one of those places. I had a magazine too that it was called Sky Dancing, and it had a list of all the helicopter bases in BC. So, looking, where's the helicopter base, where's the mountains, and where is there no heli skiing? And Coola was one of those spots.
It feels like in those days, the ski and the snowboard movies, that was, I don't want to say unlimited budgets to just go anywhere, but they definitely were looking for new spots and putting money into, these big trips.
I think so, yeah. I think it was also that it was was it growth, or it's change in the industry in terms of what was possible? Yeah. Right? People were really pushing the boundary of new tricks. Fat skis had only been out for a little while, so the whole nature of skiing was changing, and people were quite interested in seeing what was possible. Yeah. So every year there was new stuff, and I think every sport's kind of like that, right? Technological innovation hits, and then there's progression, and then it kind of plateaus for a while, where there might be incremental progression, but not like a completely reinventing what's possible on skis. And that right around that time, well, first for many years, there was the whole snowboarding revolution, and it was changing. So I think there was a lot of interest and money in that.
Yeah, skiing catching up to those guys.
Yeah, and then it switched when the fat skis came out. It kind of switched back to skiing. The momentum switched back to skiing. Yeah. And, a lot of companies trying to figure out how do we profit from this revolution and having to sponsor skiers and testing. And so, yeah, I do think there was more money, but the movies being made today are so much better than what we were able to do back then.
Yeah. Well, let's go 180 degrees back to, your first day on skis. Where was that?
That would have been in Switzerland. I was 2. I don't remember where it was. Maybe in our backyard.
Yeah.
We lived in the country at that time, and my dad was a skier, so he got us out on little skis. I actually have a picture of myself at 2 on skis.
Wow. And then how long were you over there before you ended up over in Canada?
We moved back and forth. So, born in Switzerland and moved to Chicago when I was 1, and then back to Switzerland, and then to Canada in 74, and lived in Ontario for 5 years, and then moved back to Switzerland.
Skied in Ontario as well?
Skied a little bit, skied Chicopee until my dad lost interest in the...
Yeah. How long did that take coming from Switzerland to Ontario?
Yeah, I think he only lasted a couple of years. So there was a gap in my about 3 years where I didn't ski in Ontario. And then when we moved back to Switzerland, I started skiing again. And since I've been about 14, 15, the commonality in my life, sometimes people ask, but the commonality in my adult life and late teenage years is really the only thing I've ever done is organize ski trips.
Yeah. Right. So, somehow you ended up in Vancouver?
To do university. So when I graduated I went to an international school in Switzerland, English speaking. So even though I have Swiss citizenship, I wasn't Swiss. I'm not fluent in German or Swiss German, and my mom didn't like Switzerland. So it was always kind of the expectation that I would move back, and my brothers, we would all move back to Canada upon graduating, and then do university in Canada.
Yeah.
So I looked when I was in Switzerland. I was like, okay, well, we're in the mountains in Canada, and I looked at Calgary, and I looked at Vancouver, and decided on Simon Fraser because of their semester system.
Right.
That you can study the summer and the fall and ski in the winter. So
did they have a ski club? I mean, the UBC ski club is famous.
They did actually, and they had the SFU cabin.
Right.
So the first 2-3 years I was in Whistler, I would come up the first year I only had a 3-day weekend because I did, I did 4 semesters of school in a row when I first arrived. And so but I had Fridays off. So I would take the bus up on Thursday night, ski Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and stay at the SFU cabin, and then take the bus back to Vancouver. And then the following year I was the quote unquote assistant caretaker, but I was really just good friends with the actual caretaker who would let me stay there. So
I feel like in those days, especially, that's sort of how Whistler ran, right? You knew somebody, and that's how you got your in. But what was it like the early 80s in Whistler? Blackcomb was brand new. What was the scene like up here?
I thought it was, it was great, right? It was really great. You grew up. You were living in Whistler.
Almost, almost. Late 80s.
Late 80s. So, I like Whistler today as well. It's just a lot different. And some things that I really liked about the old days are gone, but there's new things that are really good. And obviously you can look back with rosy glasses and say, oh, it was better, or it was this. And there was great things that you'd have powder, lift access powder 3-4 days after a storm. That was fantastic. You could, especially if you were willing to put in a little bit of effort, it was 40 minutes to hike to the peak of Whistler, and it was guaranteed untracked snow, right? So so that was perfect. You get maybe two walks up to the peak. You get beautiful runs all the way to the valley.
Yeah.
And you can't do that anymore, right? That's gone. But on the other hand, it's like the lifts were all super slow.
Yeah.
Right. I can't imagine being on that lift anymore. Right. I couldn't do it probably. I wouldn't have the patience to sit on that lift.
Yeah. Yeah. Once you've gone high speed,
Yeah.
it's hard to go back.
Yeah. And of course, fat skis, right? I mean, skiing on those old skinny skis is I can't imagine. I can't do that, actually. I've tried.
Right.
I've actually tried just for fun to go back to a pair of regular old skis, and I cannot ski them.
Yeah.
And it's not fun, right?
How long from when you started coming up here did you kind of start getting involved in the ski mountaineering sort of first descent and the backcountry, the early
Yeah, it
era
started
that was the
pretty
backcountry?
early, I guess. Let's see, 81, 82. So by 83 is when we did our first ski film trip.
Right.
Peter Peru, I'd seen him in Whistler, but I hadn't spoken to him. And then by a complete coincidence, he moved into the student housing that I was living in Burnaby to go to Simon Fraser. He was also enrolled at that time at Simon Fraser. So as a kind of a coincidence, he moved into that student housing. So that was in September 1983, and he started talking about wanting to do this ski film and trip to Mexico to ski Popocatépetl. And I thought, that sounds like an adventure. Super cool. Let's do that. I'm in. I want to do this.
Did you have camera experience before that?
No.
Yeah,
I was the skier at that time.
Right.
So
Star.
The star.
Athlete.
The athlete.
Right. And it was
Yeah.
just Peter with one camera and a bunch of you guys piled into a
No,
van?
there was 8 of us. Peter had kind of a little operated. We just filmed it on Super 8, right? It wasn't Super Tech or anything like that. But one of the guys, David Frizzy, had done some film school stuff. So he was the cameraman guy. And then somebody else operated. Peru would occasionally operate a second camera. And Johnny Video, I think, did some camera work as well. And so it was kind of a collaborative effort. But David Frizzy was kind of the guy that had the most filmmaking experience.
I mean, Pete, you could talk a whole podcast just about any one of Peter's trips, I think, but we covered that in the magazine. That trip, a film came out of that, and then how did you shift from, being the athlete to being one of the camera operators?
I remembered a watershed moment, I suppose, is on our third film. We went to try to ski Mount Robson, the north face of Mount Robson. And when we got there must have been in July 87, I'm going to say, or we got there, maybe it was 88, but somewhere in there. We got we climbed, got the Berg Lake, climbed up to the base of the north face, and we could see that it was ice. It probably wasn't going to be skiable, but we went up anyways, and I went and kind of front pointed up got over the Bergschrund, started front pointing up the face just because we were there.
Yeah.
And I got maybe 100 meters up the face, and it's, it's steep. It's 50 degrees. So you're on your front points, and you got 2 ice axes, and then I look up and I look down and I go, holy shit. If I was standing at the top of this, I don't know, even if it was in good conditions,
Right.
I don't know if I've got the nerve to ski this thing. It's just so much bigger than other stuff that I'd done.
Because had you already done a couple big descents in the Sea to Sky here before you guys
Yeah,
started?
we'd skied the first descent of Mount Curry, the north face, the first descent of Mount Serratus, Mount Waddington, the north face, but that's not really steep. That's more like a mountaineering thing.
Right.
But Serratus is, it's maybe 50 in places, but it's not 2,800 vertical feet, right? It's you can easily see the bottom. I was actually looking at it just the other day. It's so different today. There's so much less snow. And when we skied it the first time in August, it was a wall of snow.
Right.
Right. So it didn't look that intimidating, really.
Right.
So, but yeah, so that was a watershed moment. And on top of that, that was also, by that point, I've been starting, Eric Pahota and Trevor Peterson were on that trip.
Right.
And I'd been doing a little bit of filming. By that point, by that point, I wasn't operating a camera yet, but they were good buddies that we skied with a lot. And so they were on that trip, and they were also on the Mount Waddington trip. And it was pretty clear too that, I'm not as good a skier as Eric Pahota and as Trevor Peterson. So it's like, okay, the writing's on the wall.
Yeah, what's the other thing I can do up here?
Yeah, like exactly. This is really fun to be here, but I'm not going to be the guy that skis the north face of Mount Robson and look at what Pahota is doing. He can throw off a big air and is comfortable doing so. And so I should film him.
Were those guys a little bit younger than you? That was part of it a bit. They had just a little bit more.
They're younger and they're just better athletes.
Right.
I'm an okay athlete, but I'm not a performance athlete.
Yeah.
I was competent, but
the first descent of Mount Currie, did you guys just face punch up the?
Yeah, we started from the valley, did like idiots, walked straight up the gully. Had a bunch of rocks go winging past our heads on that climb, but that seemed the most like the easiest way up in a sense, and it probably was a little riskier than going up through the woods, but that's what we did, and then camped on the big fan. So we didn't ski it from the peak, right? We skied, what do they call it these days? The pencil couloir or whatever.
Yeah, pencil shoot or something.
Pencil shoot or something like that. But so we camped below that, and then okay, I have to turn the sound off. I thought I had, but
that's
sorry.
all right. That's how we know that it's not an AI running things, right? When stuff like that happens.
Yeah.
So I think kids in Pemberton still do those face punches, and I think they do it in a day now.
Yeah, because they're not letting people land a helicopter on top anymore, right?
Right, I did hear that.
Because for a lot of years, people were skiing it fairly regularly and just do a heli drop, ski it, and then...
It's a cheap heli drop.
Yeah, it's a cheap heli drop for a good run.
Fun.
So we skied it in May 25th in Powder, and there was still avalanche debris snow right to the valley bottom. That's also, I don't see that anymore.
Yeah.
Right? The way of things have changed.
So you've got a camera now, and then you do a bit of work with Tśzil Nch'kay. And then how did Adventure Scope come around? They were more snowboard focused, right?
So I started filming when another guy who was on that original trip, Alex Jabowski, he was in New Zealand hanging out. His wife was doing her internship as a doctor, and he phoned me from, or whatever we did back then, phoned, or it was an email, that's for sure. I don't remember how he got in touch, but he says, hey, I got this great idea. I've got a friend down here. They're making these incredible boats, basically aluminum Zodiacs, so Zodiac design looking boat made out of aluminum, unsinkable, all baffled. I want to bring these boats to Canada and sell them, and I've got some money from the New Zealand government to make a video, and you want to come down and shoot the video?
Right.
And I thought, I said, I've always wanted to go to New Zealand. And I said, yeah, I'm in, but I have to figure out how to operate a camera. So that's when I picked up a camera and got a quick lesson from David Frizzy, and then traveled down to New Zealand.
And it's 16 millimeter by then?
Yeah, by that point it was 16 millimeter. And that's another whole story that you've also covered in the magazine in the past about how we got our first 16 millimeter camera.
Yeah.
With the Big Al story.
Yeah, Al.
Yeah, so by that point I used the 16 millimeter camera that we kind of collectively had, and went to New Zealand and filmed that the boat promo video, and met my wife down there actually on that trip. So
crazy. And smuggled her back in your suitcase?
You didn't smuggle her back. It took another 5 years for her to make her way to Canada.
Right.
We, it was kind of...
Wrote a lot of letters back then?
No, we didn't. We hadn't been in touch at all
in
those 5 years. But we did stay... She's the sister of Alex's friend that he was doing this project with.
Right.
And then when 5 years later, when she was traveling through Canada, she said, they stayed at my place. Maybe wonder what they're up to. Maybe I can, crash at their place for a couple of days. And
a good mountain romance.
yeah.
So then, it picks up from there. You're making, a lot of films, adventure style.
Yes. So then, so we did, I did that project in New Zealand. Then we did the Mount Robson project, and that was the last one that was the last extreme exploration. So Peru and I had a company, and Nigel Prodder was also involved. It was called Extreme Explorations. So we did those 3 films: the In Search of the Ultimate Run, the Mexico one, the Mount Waddington one, and then the Mount Robson one. And on that Mount Robson trip, Jacques Oiseau was on that trip. We met him. He was also a Whistlerite, interested in filmmaking. And I mean, those days there weren't many people, right? There wasn't a lot of equipment, and it was expensive.
You would have to go to Vancouver to edit the films?
Yeah, you'd have to go to Vancouver, borrow stuff.
Film transfers.
So, we would shoot, and it might be a year before we'd have the money to actually even transfer the film.
Yeah, or
to
even
see what it was. Right. So it was a completely different world
Kids
than
don't
today.
understand today where you pull out your phone and make a film.
Yeah, no. So Jacques was one of those few other people with an interest in film. And so he started being kind of part of this little group. And then, so he was on that Mount Robson trip. And then he had a contact in Whistler, Andy Sachs, Shane Sachs' dad.
Right.
And he had some kind of relationship, and he was trying to then raise some money. So he went to Montreal and he's from Quebec, and he talked to a friend of his in Montreal that owned all these ski shops. And the guy says, oh, we're trying to make another movie. You want to sponsor it? And he says, skiing? He says, oh, no. Like, I'm selling snowboards like crazy out of my store, and that's the future. And by the way, the world champion lives south of you guys in, Everett, Craig Kelly. Right. And, maybe you should do a snowboard movie. That's what you should do. So Jacques came back from Montreal and said, you know what, I think we should do a snowboard movie. And he talked to Andy Sachs and managed to borrow some money from Andy Sachs to make the snowboard movie. That was actually the first time we had a budget.
Right.
Before starting, right? Other than $1,000 to buy a bunch of film, some gas. Now it was $40,000 that he loaned us. And it was, now you can plan the movie, you can buy the film, you can transfer it right away.
Yeah.
You can schedule the release because you've got the budget to carry it through completion. And so that's when we started Adventure Scope. And Prue wasn't involved in that, so it's just Jacques and I. And so then that was in 1989. We didn't get the money until March, so we filmed in March, April, and then in the summer on Mount Hood, but also in Blackcomb. And they released that movie in the fall of 1989. And at this point, there was a complete revolution happening too, right? There was enough home VCRs were online.
Yeah.
Now they weren't just there became a consumer item essentially. Right? People would buy a VCR. You have your VCR sitting at home.
You go to the video
need content.
store.
Yeah, you need content. So you go to we as the makers of the films, there was a whole new market, right? You didn't have to sell television because those early films, the only place you could show them or make any money was to sell them to television stations. Right. Now you could package a VHS cassette, put it in a store, put it in a ski shop. But in those days, they actually sold in the grocery store too, right? Yeah. So they'd be at the checkout. People would go buy their bread and everything else, and there'd be a rack of videos you could buy. And so we started selling videos in the stores and through ski shops, and that was much more predictable than
a few other people doing it at the same time. Or
Warren locally. Miller, right? There'd be the Warren Miller and Greg Stump was also active at that time. Yeah. There wasn't really, who else was there in the snowboard world? I mean, Burton made their own in-house movie. Right. I didn't see that for sale in Whistler, but it was, if you were in a snowboard shop, you would have been able to get it.
And how was it working with Craig Kelly? Did you do a few projects
We worked with Craig for the next eight years, right? Until we stopped, until Adventure Scope shut down in 1997. Right. I was working with Craig on various trips and going
That's-
traveling around the world. And
That's fortuitous to have, one of the best to ever do it.
yeah, no, and we got along well, and he's a good guy. And then so then we made that snowboard movie, the Smooth Groove. And when Burton saw it, they liked it better than the movie they did,
Right.
which I think was called The Big Chill or something. And so then they contacted us and they said, hey, do you want to do our in-house movie that would have been the release in, fall 1990. And we said, yeah, absolutely. So then that's kind of when we were essentially off to the races. Burton put in the money, they managed the sales, they had their network, and it went into all the snowboard shops. And then we did the Burton movie for, I think, about 3 years, the essential in-house movie. And then Burton changed it changed where they didn't do an in-house movie, but they sponsored all the movies, right?
Yeah.
Like the Mike Hatchett movie, the Mac Dog movie. So everybody got a little bit of budget from Burton, and we got some of that budget, and we also got money from whoever else.
Yeah.
There were so many snowboard manufacturers at that time.
That was a boom for sure.
That was a boom, yeah.
And then 8 or 9 years after you started, technological shift, digital video.
That was not even that. So 97, we shut down Adventure Scope.
Right. That's right when it was picking up.
But I was never a snowboarder. And that's when, now there were snowboarders making snowboard movies that were way more tuned into the scene than I was, that, people that actually cared what a 540 back whatever is, right? And I didn't ever really care. I was just about the mountains and traveling in the mountains and capturing beautiful imagery. But the technical part wasn't my scene. So there was people that could do that better anyways, right?
Yeah.
And we kind of peaked and maxed out it wasn't getting any bigger, or it wasn't changing, right?
Right.
In a sense, it was more of the same. And so at that point we kind of dissolved the company, and I started just freelancing and doing what I liked best anyways, which was being in the mountains filming.
Sure.
So I wasn't making the movie. I didn't have to do any more editing. I got out of that part of it, and then just hired myself out to all these different people. Got a couple of really good cool contracts. Had a 6-month contract on the making of the IMAX Extreme movie. So another old ski filmmaker, John Long,
Sure.
got a bunch of money to do IMAX Extreme. So, my first opportunity to film surfing in Hawaii, and we were in Oahu on the North Shore, and it would have been around December 1997 when the largest waves to roll through Hawaii in 35 years were there.
Lucky.
Right. Waimea Bay closed down. They were trying to run the Eddie Aikau, and they couldn't do it because the entire bay was just completely, whitewater, and they couldn't paddle out.
Wow.
So it was quite an experience. And that was such a cool job because, as the making of guy, you've got zero stress.
Yeah.
Right. You're not responsible for what happens.
Capture their stress.
Yeah. You're capturing their stress. Right. So it was 6 months of, just tagging along and going to all these wonderful places and working with top level athletes. First time I filmed rock climbing too, with Lynn Hill and Megan Fagan. Yeah, it was
Pretty good. So, I mean, you mentioned John Long and the winter sport, especially filmmaking community in those days was still, and it probably still is, quite tight knit. But when did you meet up with Christian Beijing and with Swede? Was that?
I met Swede really early on in Whistler, not in a filmmaking capacity, but in a skiing. Even at first, not even so much skiing, but through mutual friends. And I actually met his ex-wife first, and then. But Swede's an entertaining guy, fun to be with, and he was kind of doing the same thing, a lot of the same thing, for ski descents and ski mountaineering, and there wasn't a big crowd of people. And then I started actually hiring him when he kind of got into a little bit of guiding. He got a job. The first time I worked with him, he was guiding at Atlin, heli skiing, it's based out of Atlanta. What was Klondike Heliskiing? It was
Right.
called, and up way northern BC. And I did a trip up there for Adventure Scope still, and I went because I knew he was going to be the guide, and I liked being with Swede, and so we went there, and then he did a great job finding us, the best terrain. So then when he only did that one winter, and then as we started using more and more helicopters, you kind of need that person, right? I'm filming, the athletes are doing their thing, but who's kind of coordinating the safety, communications,
Sure.
providing some input on, what the hazards could be. And it's always ends up being the athlete's decision, but you kind of need somebody that's not focused on
Getting the shot.
Getting the shot, yeah. So then we started. Swede kind of became that part of that filming team. For myself, that he was always the go-to guy when we were doing heli-based stuff.
For the companies and the producers, that was an easy sell. Like, hey, if we're going somewhere, we're gonna bring Swede. Like, we need somebody. They bought in. Everyone bought in on that.
Yeah. Nobody actually ever questioned it. It's just like you'd get money from Burton, and they want you to film with whoever, and then it's up to the film company to make that happen. You're not getting more money or less money.
Right.
It's
just make it work.
You make it work, yeah.
Right.
And Christian, he was in Red Mountain doing his thing with film and just getting started. And I think I met him at the Banff Mountain Film Festival.
Right.
And then a few years later, just met him, didn't.
And that would have been, he had Locomotion there? Or
yeah, I think it was Locomotion, his first movie. And then a couple of years later, he moved to Whistler. And I don't remember the timelines on that. But then Adventure Scope started hiring him. After a few years, Adventure Scope started getting bigger, and we were doing multiple films. So we had multiple film groups around the world filming. So I would do always, I was gone most of the winter filming, but we would also hire Christian to go do trips. So he was on a number of really good trips that I would have loved to have been on myself, but you can't be everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's interesting, Beat. I mean, between Peter Peru and Swede and Christian, you've, over the years managed to dig up some of the biggest characters in the last, 40 years of Sea to Sky history and align yourself with them.
Yeah. I think I like characters. I like people that are a little bit out there.
Yeah. You, Swede, and Beijing ended up, starting Coola Helisports. You mentioned you went there on a trip and fell in love. How did that come together? It must have been a challenging endeavor to put together.
They're absolutely. It was a big project, and we had no idea how big a project it was going to be. And we didn't actually start by thinking we were going to start a heli skiing company.
Right.
I remember that quite clearly too. So it was just Swede and I on the very first trip in February. Christian wasn't there. And that was for a film for a standard film segment. And then we Swede and I fell in love with the thing and talked TGR into doing a project in March. So we were there again in March 2000. And then Christian had a Rossignol project he needed to do, and he had been scheduled to go to McGillivray Pass, but this is now April. The sun was, the snow wasn't any good at McGillivray Pass, so he didn't want to go there. So he asked Swede and I, he says, "Well, I got this project. I was supposed to be second camera on that project, and Swede was going to do the safety thing."
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, I don't want to go to McGillivray Pass. Where can I go?" And I think both Swede and I said, "Well, we should go back to Coola, right? I mean, we haven't even tapped the potential there. It'll be so cool." So the three of us were there in April, and then on one of the days that we couldn't film in the mountains, we were driving around, and we drove into the property, Tweedsmuir Park Lodge property, which was shut down. There was nobody there, but we did drive in, and it's like there's a lodge.
Cabins.
I mean, it's kind of an old lodge. There wasn't any cabins, but there was rooms in the lodge.
Right.
And their mountain is just right there. Like, how come there's nobody here? How come there's nobody heli skiing? Oh my God, somebody's going to start. Yeah. And then where are we going to film? Because now we're now we're feeling possessive about this is where we just want to film.
Yeah.
We can just film here for the next 2 decades and not, run out of new things to do. And so I think that conversation, I think that I don't remember who said what in what order, but it was like that, right? Oh my, how come there's nobody here? Oh my God, somebody's going to start.
Yeah.
Why don't we do it?
Yeah, and
right?
we're standing in the yard of this empty lodge that's been abandoned.
This could be the base, right? This is where you would be. So we said, okay, we'll apply for it. And then not really thinking we're going to heli ski so much as thinking, well, we're going to lock it in and then it's going to be our filming domain and we'll just run film groups through here. And so then we started the application process in December 2000. So we got back, we had, summer kind of organizing, and then we formed the company in December 2000, hired Cascade Environmental Research to write the management plan for the application to government for tenure.
Yeah.
I had to do all that posting where you go back up to Bella Coola and staple your intent onto the telephone pole somewhere where locals can see it. Did all that, and then it took a while. And then somebody else, the big article came out in was it February 2001? The big title page on Powder Magazine and said Bella Coola open for skiing or something like, I don't remember
probably Les Anthony wrote that, or
I think it was Les Anthony.
He's always blown up the spots.
Yeah. And so then, of course, now the world knew about Bella Coola, and sure enough, somebody else put in an application for heli skiing, but luckily we'd already put ours in, so ours is
top of the pile.
Top of the pile. Technically, the government's not supposed to accept a competing, but there's no. They did. Inexperienced clerk accepted it,
right.
So then they couldn't unaccept it. So now we're in a competing. That was a lot of stress because now we're in a competing application process. We have no idea how this is going to get resolved. So the only thing that the government gave us in return, I think, for their mistake, was they said you can revamp your management plan and resubmit it before we make a decision on who gets it. So at that point, we just went overboard. We wrote a 300, you can get a tenure on a 20-page management plan, 30-page at that time.
Right.
But at that point, we just did not want to now lose this. So we ended up with like a 300-plus page door stopper of a management plan. We threw everything in there that we had, and we had experience in the area. We had runs mapped, or we had contacts with locals, letters of support, and so we did. The government did eventually decide in our favor. So then we got the tenure in August 2002, and immediately thought, this is really cool. And between the three of us, I think at that time we had 80 plus years in the ski world, in dealing with skiers and companies, and so we wrote to all the people we knew and said, by the way, if you do want to go heli skiing, we can take you heli skiing, and we'll run it between our film trips.
Right.
And to our, at least to mine, surprise, 44 people signed up. So we had 5 weeks of 4 guests, or is it 40? Anyways, we ran 5.5 weeks actually so we had 44 guests. And I remember one guy in particular, he bought 8 seats, and he was a Whistler guy, friend of Christian's actually, a contact of Christian's. And he showed up on our desk, on my deck, and handed me a check for almost $90,000 at that time. Wow. And I'd never seen a check that big at that time. I went, wow, this is real, right?
Yeah.
So then we bought the safety equipment. We didn't put any. We didn't really have any money, but with the money that these people were providing as a deposit, pre-sold the seats. We bought the skis and the backpacks, and we're able to hire Paul Burnson and Woody Sean Tribe as the guides that first year.
Yeah.
And
you guys already had the lodge, or did you have to?
No, we didn't. We just paid by the room night. So we contacted the owner, and we stayed there in 21 and 22 as well inside the lodge for filming, right? Not for the skiing. So we were familiar with the place. And by that point, the owner had put in some cabins, so it was now much more appropriate for hosting heli skiing guests. We'd have 8 guests stay at the lodge and the 2 guides, and had and then it was that was the first year 44. The next year was 60 guests, and then in 2005 it was 120 guests. It just went completely blew up.
You guys just had to make it up as you went.
Yeah, and that was the last year in 2005 that I did any film work.
Right.
I was with Christian working on that Crazy Canucks made for television movie, like not a documentary. It was a dramatization of the Crazy Canuck years with Steve Poborski and Ken Reed and Dave Irwin. So David Frazee was the DP on that, the whole thing, but they needed a B unit to film all the skiing. Right. So Christian and I were in Austria for 6 weeks filming, downhill racing. So stunt doubles filming the stuff. So, and I was gone for 6 weeks while the heli skiing was happening, and I remember thinking to I can't do this anymore. This is the heli skiing is way too big an opportunity. It's blowing up. Who knows where this is going to go? Yeah. I know where the film world's going. Athletes are always 20, and I'm getting a year older every year, so I'm getting farther and farther away from the scene kind of thing. Yeah. So it was kind of a no-brainer. And again, very fortuitous for me, because if I'd stuck with that, we still filmed that on 16 millimeter, and I was able to rent out my own equipment. You're making money on the rental plus your day rate. And I think that is the last year literally probably anybody filmed anything on 16 millimeter. And then the red cameras came out, and I would have had to spend $100,000, $200,000 buying new equipment that would only be obsolete in 6 months. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm kind of glad I missed that whole.
Yeah. No. Good time to pivot out. Mm-hmm. And so, then you just sort of ran the heli skiing, refined everything, like when people are not now you need to have this chef and this. It's and all that.
Changed. I mean, I think when you're first starting, people will also give you a bit of the benefit of the doubt. Yeah. I do remember we did have one group that kind of complained and said it felt a little bit. I didn't hear about this until years later, but it felt like you guys were using our money to figure out what you were doing. And it's a fair comment, right? It's literally a fair comment. Yeah. But I always like that part more than the refined stuff, right? When it's all figured out and there is no mistakes. It's fun, but it's not nearly as fun as when it's an adventure and you don't know what you're doing. Yeah. Right. So. Yeah. But different for different people, right? So.
And so then, once you got out of filming, were you just mostly in Bella Coola all winter, and just banging out pow turns as much as possible, or did the work kind of take over from the skiing?
Actually, getting out of the film world liberated my skiing again, because now instead of, I didn't realize that, right? I didn't realize what I'd been missing all those years, because for all those years I was doing a lot of filming. I didn't really do a lot of skiing for myself. And you'd get the run in here and there, or a day here and there, but it's a mindset thing, right? It's literally, you're focused on your work, even when you're not skiing with a backpack, it's still, you're looking, you're not thinking of skiing as a sport as much. And then it took a little while to get back into, I'm skiing for myself. I'm just having fun. There's no worries. And especially now, I love skiing with a guide. I probably shouldn't, but I farm out my safety. I don't worry about it. They say ski that, I go ski it, and it's freeing. Yeah. Right? It's fantastic.
Yeah. And I mean, it's been decades and decades of skiing, and you still love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't ski powder on the mountain, though. I leave that to others. What I do on the ski lifts now is I literally only do high-speed cruisers first thing in the morning, ski from 8, as soon as the lift opens, ski until 10. Sometimes you can get on, if it's not too busy, you can get 30,000 vertical feet in before 10 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, and then go to the office and work in the afternoon.
And I mean, that's pretty fun too. High-speed groomers.
It's the next best thing to powder, right?
Yeah.
When it's good groomers and you can go really fast and you can work the arc of your ski, that is just so much fun.
I mean, you mentioned the films that are getting made now, and it seems like there's the big films that come out once a year, and then there's, an endless onslaught of internet films. But like, just looking at what the kids are doing, building upon what you've been doing your whole life, like how does it feel to see these, the Sherpas or, the Sweetgrass guys or...
Yeah, I am just so impressed, right? It's with they're real movies, right? They're telling stories. It's so much more involved, and I mean, it's easier. So I suppose you've got the time to kind of do that kind of work. Whereas for us, there was not that time and not the capacity to map out your show that way.
Yeah.
But I'm really impressed with these guys making the ski movies, and I'm kind of glad I don't have to compete against them because I don't think I could.
Yeah. I remember trying to jerry rig a helmet cam, right? Or like taking the door off a plane and shaking out the side with your camera to get an aerial shot, and all that stuff is so different.
Sometimes it's not good to be ahead of your time. I talked, there was a movie called Steep.
Yep.
Right. Chris Davenport was in it. Eric Pahota was there. I'm blanking on the guy's name. He was killed. He died 3 weeks later in La Grave. Big name in big mountain skiing. I'll think of it later. But but the production company contacted us, and they wanted to. So they're going to come. They were in Bella Coola for 3 weeks, and they wanted to do something different. Right. And how do you reinvent, or how can you reinterpret how you film skiing? And they had big budget. They were legitimate, doing like a documentary about big mountain skiing. And so I had a friend that he lived with us for a while, a guy called Jim Rudnunski, who invented the cable cam system. Right. I don't know if you remember he was testing it up on Sodan Couloir. We had the cable running down the mountain, and he was, at that point, it was an operator sitting on a gondola going down the wire. Yeah. And, this is a way to film skiing where you're kind of on a wide angle lens. You're next to the skier, tracking the skier. People would handhold the camera and ski down a slope, but that was fairly limiting. Yeah. This would be much more controlled, much more interesting type of camera work. And so I said, we've got, we should hire Jim Rudnunski. And by this point, his system was so refined, right? He's got 4 Academy Awards for technical achievement, but he was a friend of ours. So I convinced him to hire Jim Rudnunski to come to Bella Coola and set up 2 cable cam systems in the mountains. One kind of on a lower elevation slope with some trees around, and then one in the alpine. So we spent literally 3 weeks setting it took to build these cable cam systems. They spent over $1 million on this project. The weather sucked for that 3 weeks. When it was finally built, they were ready to film, but the weather was bad. And then, Saturday it was going to clear up, but that was the day that they had to pull out. And I said, you can't pull out. It's rigged. You don't have the shot yet. And they said, we got to pull out. We don't have there's no more money. Right. So they pulled out. They never got the shot.
Wow.
Spent $1 million. And now you can get a $200 drone and get that shot, but even better because you're not limited to one line, right? You're going like this all over. Right?
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's crazy. So, obviously, you mentioned in the mountains we lose people, right? And that's part of the story. Do you think the industry has changed the way they treat or support the athletes, or that risk, or the after effects of loss? I've always sort of felt like it's
There's
still
a lot
a
of
little bit
changes.
of an industry that kind of eats its own young, but
Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast because there's so much to unpack, right? The safety culture is way higher now
Yeah.
than it was, and there's good things and bad things in that, right? It's nobody likes to lose a friend or anything like that, but at the same time, when everything's just about safety, it also, where's the adventure?
yeah.
Right. And I think adventure is really important. And adventure means that you don't know what the outcome is. And that means literally that, you could die. Right. That's always the possibility.
Yeah.
And so as a heli skiing company owner too, I can't, I have to toe the line and it is in a commercial sense. It's all about safety.
Yeah.
And I leave that's the guides department. I don't get involved in that at all. But what was that guy that got so much bad press because he went out and he got stuck on where was that? It was in the news, and he got just rubbished through the mountain community for being an irresponsible, not being
Right, for being alone and
and just being irresponsible.
Right.
And I'm kind of going, well, he's out there for an adventure. And
yeah.
I mean, I think the difference now is you get on your inReach and I'm in trouble and push the button, and,
which is great.
But it's at the same time, I think maybe push people. So that's the whole other side of that story is that is behavior changing and becoming more risky? One, because people are making ski movies like we did and showcasing all this stuff, which promotes it, pushes more people out into the backcountry, more people running risks, right? Which is also not necessarily sustainable for search and rescue.
The numbers game is, the more people out there, the more problems you're going to have.
Yeah. And, that's not a good thing for a bunch of reasons. And because of this technology, because of inReach, are people not preparing themselves properly before going out, or are they, using it as a crutch and then saying, oh, well, I'll just go because if things go wrong, I'll just push the button.
Yeah.
Right. So
do you think there's still a culture of kids, from back east or from, somewhere overseas that the moment they graduate high school, they're, meeting their buddy in the parking lot in a station wagon or a van and driving to a ski town and ski bumming it. Yeah. I feel like it's maybe not happening as much around here just because of the cost.
Yeah.
But hopefully they're going somewhere.
I'm sure they're going somewhere. And I think you're right. It's like, what would you do if you were 18 or 17?
Yeah,
would you drive to Whistler?
And you had
or would you drive to Shames?
Yeah. Like
right?
you maybe had $300-400 in your pocket.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Like I know where I would be going. I'd be going somewhere where the lift tickets are cheap. You can live cheap.
Yeah.
Maybe you can still squat or you can live in your van.
Yeah. Did you ever squat?
I lived in Whistler for 5 years without really paying rent. I paid a few bucks once in a while at the SFU cabin, but I lived in a squatter's cabin. I lived in a tent. I had the nicest place I ever lived in Whistler, not in terms of the housing, but in terms of the location, was on that point on Alta Lake. Next to
by Lakeside there.
Yeah, Lakeside. I lived right on that point of rock in a little cabin. I mean, no running water, no electricity.
But you got a lake.
But it was, I did pay rent there. It was $500 for the year.
Right.
So
it's amazing that zone took that long to get.
Oh yeah.
developed.
No, it's the guy that owned it all. That whole strip was all owned by one guy, and that's the guy I actually rented it from for $500. The family owned it, and they didn't really know what to. I think they couldn't find consensus on what to do with it. But eventually, when some of the older generation died, they sold it.
Yeah,
and they did keep one lot, I think, and now have their family house there, but. That's why it took a while.
It's harder to get away with that kind of stuff now.
Yeah, no.
Around here, anyhow.
I don't know. I think there are some people still squatting.
I mean, I know there's a cave out there somewhere. It's hard to kick someone out of a cave. Bea, what's next for you then?
I'm still really enjoying the whole heli skiing thing. It's a really interesting project. But my role has changed quite a lot from,
Right.
I've now got a really good team working with me and kind of running the day-to-day operations, which frees me up to take on new challenges, I don't know, growth opportunities. But in today's world, all this stuff has to be seen through the lens of First Nations and, the ownership of the land issues that we're dealing with. So a lot of my work these days is to try to form, I've been working on it for a while, and it goes make progress in spurts, and then it backtracks a little bit, but to involve the community more in what we're doing and be a better benefit to that community, so that the social license issues of heli skiing, and it's not just, it's also around climate, around the perception of carbon footprint of a bunch of rich people, being in helicopters out in the mountains. The conservation, wildlife issues are much more prevalent, and more awareness on our part, but also on society's part. And then, of course, the whole community, right? With the Bella Coola community, Newhawk in particular, also the Chilcotin on the plateau where we also ski. So my work now is around those kind of things, right? Dealing with the climate issues. And one of the new projects I'm trying to research is using sustainable aviation fuels. So if we can, I haven't pulled the trigger on this, but the idea is working with a company where we would buy, we do about 290,000 liters of jet fuel a year. And if I can this year use 2% of that amount and buy 5,000 liters of sustainable aviation fuel, and instead of that's got reduces the carbon footprint by 80% on that 2% of the fuel we use. But then to ramp that up, and maybe we're at 10% by 2030, but the goal would be to be by, like with so many other companies, right, is by 2050 to have everything be carbon neutral, right? Not essentially zero carbon emissions.
Is there a supply thing there? Like, is that sustainable fuel difficult to get?
Yeah. So, I'd love to have a barrel of sustainable aviation fuel and put it into our helicopter, but it doesn't work that way.
Right.
The helicopters aren't certified to use sustainable aviation fuel at this point. The very first test flight was done where they put a 40% sustainable aviation fuel mix in with 60% regular, hydrocarbon fuels.
Yeah.
And so that was successful. But sustainable aviation fuel isn't made in BC, right? So that's the thing. It makes no sense to ship that fuel from where they make it. There's some being made in Texas, there's being made in Europe, but environmentally it would be a larger footprint. So the way it works is that the fuel we buy goes into the fueling system, say at Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam. So they dump, there's a few airports in the world that are starting to do this. So we're not the only company buying sustainable aviation fuel. So we buy the fuel, it goes into the fueling system at the Amsterdam airport, and then, but that means that KLM is using, 5,000 liters less of hydrocarbons than. So in the near term, that's how it's going to work, right? It's a net gain. It's not about us personally reducing it, but providing the resources for somebody else who is better placed to use less.
You mentioned the wildlife as well. Bella Coola, obviously, big grizzly bear terrain. How many bears did you see? Were you up there this summer?
Oh, we've got bears on so a big part of our summer business, another lucky break, in my life was that we buy the lodge. Eventually we bought that Tweedsmuir Park Lodge and now own and operate it. And as well, what do you do in the summer, right? Here you got this asset, it's expensive. You got to make some money with it in the summer. But there's just fell in our lap. There's tons of grizzly bears. We're on this beautiful river. salmon, and people come from all over the world to come watch the grizzly bears in the summer.
Does it feel like there's more bears now than there was 20 years ago?
It comes and goes, waves. So, and it's every year. It's like I ask the guides, are there more bears? Are there less bears? How are the bears doing? Because now it's really important to our business success to have these bears there, and it's tied to the salmon run. Essentially, it's right. Is it a good salmon run or is it not a good salmon run? And if it's a good one, that means next year there's more bears. And if it's a bad run, the bears unfortunately might not survive the winter. It comes and goes. It seems this year there's been a lot of bears on the lawn. So we're September 1st is the official start. So yesterday was the official start of our bear viewing season. But in the 2 weeks prior to that, the bears have started coming. And even when I was up there 2 weeks ago, there was bear walking around with its cub on the lawn, and it's really cool, actually. It's always a thrill. It's a definite perk of the job. Yeah, it is always a thrill seeing a bear. Final question before we go, Beat. How many days heli skiing will you hope to get this winter? It's never enough. But I mean, that's not every day heli skiing is great either, right? It can be wind hammered. It can be. So I'm getting kind of picky, and I like to ski the adventure. I like to ski good snow, and I want to have an adventure. So I get a bit choosy as well. But sure. If I can get 20 days in, that would satisfy my need. There we go. That's a good benchmark for everyone. Let's get 20 days of any kind of skiing this year. Yeah. Well, 20 days of high-speed cruising and 20 days of good powder. There we go. We'll call it 40. That's 40. It's got to be minimum 40. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time, Beat. And thanks. Where do people go? Say I wanted to book a heli ski trip. Where do I go? Well, the website, bellacoolahelisports.com is a good place. You can just search Bella Coola skiing, and I'm sure we'll pop up. And all right, folks. Well, I'll meet you up there. Well, there we go. Thank you so much, Beat, for your time there. And listen, Mountain Lifers, some of those AdventureScope films that Beat made back in the day are available on YouTube. Some of the extreme exploration stuff is online as well. Not as much, but if you want to learn more about that era and the good times therein, be sure to check out, as I mentioned, the Peter Shranowski article in Mountain Life Coast Mountains this past summer edition, or online now at mountainlifemedia.ca. The store is up there as well if you want to buy some swag, look your best back to school, or start thinking about Christmas. And beyond that, thanks for listening. Here's to the next 2 years of giving her and living it up with mountain life. Thank you to Adrian Gendro for the guitar licks and Shirai Rules for the voiceovers off the top. We're not changing that anytime soon. Beyond that, just take care of each other out there. Take care of yourselves. It's early season. Ski season has not even started yet. So make sure you don't injure yourself doing something stupid before the snow even flies. Beyond that, have fun, live it up, and leave the campsite better than you found it.